like New York is the easiest job in the place. When I was invited to participate here, I recommended actually that Michel Duval come, because Michel actually knows this issue inside and out, and I think he has plenty to contribute. And I was a bit puzzled about what I would say, because I know that as an ambassador, there are staff there who boil everything down and say, you need to know the following 2 things, or the following 3 things. And you sail into a meeting and you say those 3 things and you look brilliant and you leave, and you never really actually understood what you were talking about. But it was okay because none of the other permanent representatives understood either. So you could wing it quite well, relying on people who actually knew something. I have a handful of observations to make. One is that we should not, and I think the military has, some people in the military have, confused the strategical interest and the tactical interest. Canada has, I've had a conversation with Vice Admiral Buck. I've heard and I've read what General Hillier has said. Vice Admiral Buck once told me, or a group of us, in which I was included, that as so long as he had any authority, there would never be another Canadian participation in a UN mission. And General Hillier, if you read his memoirs, talks about how useless the UN was. The only thing that seemed to be worse in his mind was NATO. And I can understand why, well, first of all, what does that leave you? It probably leaves you coalitions of the willing. Coalitions of the willing under U.S. leadership. But it doesn't recognize the strategic disadvantage of coalitions of the willing. If you talk to Brahimi, if you talk to Louise Frechette, if you talk to Jean-Marie Guéhenno, the point that they will make is that if we... I can't get closer. You can't get closer.
This one closer.
I think he's okay now. I think he's got it. Okay. I have a very soft voice, and I'm. Can people in the back of the room hear?
Yeah.
C'est l'autre bouton ici. C'est ici. Ouais.
Can people hear? Okay. If you listen to Louise Frechette, Jean-Marie Guéhenno, Lakhdar Brahimi, the fundamental point they're making is that if the UN missions are inadequate, then it's up to the countries who have the capability to make them adequate to do so. It isn't to walk away and sit in judgment. And there's a sense in which the Canadian government and some of the Canadian agencies tend to sit in judgment on the UN. It's not good enough, it's not up to it, whatever happened to the UN. The fundamental message is the UN is us. And if it's not working properly, we should make it work properly. We should do what we can do to make it work properly. General Hillier was talking about, the Security Council didn't work weekends. I was on the Security Council for about 6 months. I saw plenty of sunrises over the East River while I was on the Security Council. The idea that somehow this is an organization that's completely dysfunctional is really not correct. This is the same point that Jocelyn was making. If 1,000 airplanes landing at Trudeau Airport, or 100,000 airplanes landing at Trudeau Airport safely, are not as big news as one that crashes. So you get something going wrong, and that becomes the whole reputation of the UN. And the fact that all of the things that have been accomplished, some of them better than others, some of them not, nonetheless, all of the accomplishments are basically ignored. The UN does a way better than the UN bashers think it does. And at the same time, it even does better than the UN defenders in Canada probably realize it does. It has, if you think of how it's innovated, nowhere in the charter is the issue of the international criminal judicial system, and yet the UN has built one. Nowhere is the idea of responsibility to protect there. The UN has done that. The UN has basically stigmatized the idea of aggression. Why did the world get so upset with the Americans? If that had been 100 years ago, no one would have said anything. because the idea of aggression has been stigmatized, and it's been partly done by the UN. We don't understand, I think, how significant the UN is to make other things work. I think the analogy that I would use is the UN has become the motherboard of international relations. You can't, if there was no UN charter, if there was no UN, would the G20 work? Would the G8 be acceptable, or would it be highly contentious and contended? Would the Millennium Development Goals, would that have been possible without the UN? What about environmental treaties? What about the assimilation of all of the international norms and practices through human rights treaties, environmental treaties, terrorism, the assimilation of the counterterrorism treaties into national practice? We are underestimating, because it's there and because most of it is not controversial, how significant it is. And I think it's certainly up to a country like Canada to understand that. I want to talk a little bit, because there's been so much. I've heard a lot of pessimism, and it's hard not to be pessimistic about, when you hear Nedzla and Carolyn talk about peace building. But I just want to add a kind of an optimistic note. And again, it's got to do with the airplanes landing safely at Trudeau. And it's about Canadian foreign policy, because many of us are Canadians here. Canada has never been richer. Canada's never been better educated. Canadians have never been better educated. Canadians have never been healthier. Canadians have never been more effective. We have never been in a position better than we are right now to have an effective, constructive foreign policy. There is really nothing stopping us. If you take a look at our relationships, there's a lot of pessimism about the United States. Think for a second about the United States. Of the 200 top universities in the world, 58 are in the United States. Of the 20 top universities, 13 are in the United States. And where does Canada rank in this? Are we anywhere in this list? Actually, we're third. We're now tied for third. We used to just be third. We're third in that sense. If you look again at the United States, because there's a lot of pessimism about the United States, how many Nobel Prizes did the U.S. win last year? The U.S. won 9 Nobel Prizes last year. How many Nobel Prizes has China ever won? Less than 9. I think about 5. The United States won more Nobel Prizes in 1 year than China has ever won. If you look at China has no university in the top 20. It's got scarcely any universities in the top 200. If you look at the literacy rate, if you look at India, people are talking about India, the country that's coming. It ranks 144th on the UNDP Human Development Index. 144th. 57% of women can't read. I'm not trying to deprecate India or China. Far from it, and China is certainly going to be, is streets ahead of India, by the way, and it's streets ahead of all of the other BRICS, and it is already an important player. But there's room for us in this. What I'm trying to say is, if we want to have an effective foreign policy, we've got to have the instruments. The UN is an instrument. We've got to have the allies. The United States is going to be, for as long as any of us is working in this room, the dominant international country. So we've got the allies. We've got the vehicles, we've got the institutions, we've got the brains. All we lack is the will and the vision and the leadership to have another golden age of Canadian diplomacy. So I think that it's, in short, nothing is stopping us from making a contribution internationally. that